Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. We're back after a couple weeks. Good morning, Yasmin. Yeah, fresh back from Washington from our retreat on the San Orcas Island, which was fabulous as it always is.
Right.
Many things that we can talk about, but it all stems out of being triggered, right? And it is a pretty common topic in spiritual energy work, right? But it's all a matter of how we look at it, because I feel like it's funny. The thing where I find that many of us get hung up, including myself sometimes, is the ego wants to stick when you get triggered. And a trigger means anytime you're angry, upset, fearful.
It's an emotional glut.
Yes.
Whatever.
Right.
Right.
As we text each other, the little puke face.
Right. And it feels on the verge of being irrational.
Although the ego doesn't think so. The ego says no.
Well, it's like it comes out of nowhere. It's unexpected, and it's like it's a WTF moment.
Yeah, right. But sometimes it's a situation, sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's somebody, like on a continual basis, like, oh my gosh, every time I talk to this person, I get triggered, right?
Yes.
And so that's more of, first of all, changing I think the verbiage around it. Because a lot of times we'll be like, oh, that person just pisses me off. That person just, has bad juju. That person just, how many times we talk about somebody in a negative fashion, and really what it is it's disguising a trigger of our own.
Right. And it's about you, not them.
Always. That's the key.
Right.
And, and as you know, I've had people just stop talking to me because they get so fixated on being triggered by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be talking to me about it and they want me to jump on the wagon. And I'm going, so what is it about that person that's triggering you? Because it's only you. Like, what is it that they're reflecting back to you that you're judging within yourself so vehemently that you need to desperately put it onto them?
Right. What energy are you holding that doesn't resonate with what they're showing you?
Yes.
And it's that energy, what is that, dissonance?
Yeah.
That creates that friction that your body then goes, I have to respond to this. I have to react to this. I have to do something to stop this friction. And the thing that's helped me the most is to be able to step out of the friction, which in my mind, like you said, is the ego, and be able to ask myself questions differently.
Mm-hmm.
And from I don't even want to say objective perspective, but a non-emotional perspective.
Right.
And say, okay, let me focus on how I'm feeling instead of what they're doing.
Right.
And in doing that, it allows like the dust to settle, so you can actually just see what's really going on. And we talked about that on our retreat.
Yeah.
But I think that getting to that place of saying to myself, let me just look at what it's making, or what I think it's making me feel. Yeah. Because the feelings are already there. They're just being brought to the surface by what's happening.
I know. And the ego wants to say, no, but, and here's the finger. I'm pointing, because I don't want to know. It's not about me. It's about them. It's totally them. They trigger me because of their behavior. They bring me down.
If they hadn't done this, I wouldn't feel this way.
Right. So then you should thank them, because if they hadn't done this and they made you feel this way, then it pushed something to the surface that you were ignoring otherwise.
It would have still been hidden.
Right.
Right.
Which the ego doesn't want to hear either. right? And especially when we get really triggered, right? Like TNT fireworks kind of triggering.
Right, right. And it's like your rationality just goes out the window and you feel like you're running through the streets naked, blind,
Right. Screaming
with
at the
your
top
hair
of your
on
lungs.
fire, with
Yeah,
your hair on fire.
exactly. Exactly. So,
Unprecedented.
so, you know, the thing, and we always, I mean, this is what we have gotten into such a deep habit on, is this projection onto other
Yes,
people. Right. And we love saying it about our family, about our spouses, our kids, our parents, our friends. And so the first step is, first of all, like I said, first changing our verbiage from saying, well, that person just pisses me off or irritates me or blah, 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 to this. The first step is that person triggers me,
right,
or this situation triggers me. Right. And when you start putting that in there, you're taking responsibility for, I'm being triggered, right? When you're saying, oh,
right,
that person pisses me off, or they annoy me, or or you don't even say that, oh, they're just so irritating, or they're so negative, they're so,
right.
blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you can say that, yes, you can say that objectively, but most of the time it's said with an inflection of, oh, that's not me.
Right, right, right. I don't know what their problem is, but it's not me.
Right. Right. And oh, I feel so sorry for that person's and it's, so all that stuff is something to look at and say, well, when we start seeing things, when you go back to guidance, right? When you start seeing the world as a message. And that was our third course in the Adventures
Right,
in Wonderland series, is all on guidance, and seeing that everything is a message back to us. It's a big transition to get to a place of saying, what is this situation or this person showing me that I'm not otherwise looking at? And
yes,
it's causing this egoic emotional reaction to happen.
yes. Or what have I hidden from myself so completely that I'm asking this reflection of me to show me
Yeah.
so that I can see it.
Yeah. And when you do that, the ego sort of gets deflated because it goes, oh, wait, you just turn the mirror around. That's not fun.
Right, right.
And that it sounds easy, but it's really challenging in the moment because we're so used to letting ourselves get sparked and triggered in a certain situation.
Right.
Now, as we've talked about, like all through October in as we launched the shadow program, right?
Right.
The thing is to use it as a tool. So anything,
Exactly.
even an explosive emotional reaction, is something to use as a tool after we have fun playing in it.
Right.
And what my goal, I always tell people is, let yourself sit in it, let it happen, but then observe it, let your ego have its playtime, observe it, and do your best not to project it onto others. Let you just have it self-contained within yourself so that you can play out whatever temper tantrum or whatever you want to hold, right? So then after that, then the questions start. So what was that about?
Right. Right.
Why did I feel like I had to do that? Where did that emotion come from? Why did I have that reaction?
Well, and for me, it's, if you want to, my first reaction is, well, we just need to talk about this. And then you sit down and you start formulating what you want to say. And you want to say, you made me feel X, Y, and Z. And if you can stop yourself from that overwhelming need for that and to say, I feel X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, immediately for myself, the playing field changes.
Yes.
And it's not the blame game and it's not the, you did this to me. It's more like, well, why do I feel that way? And
Yeah.
it becomes a legitimate question instead of a blame and a finger pointing and an accusation, and it becomes more of a conversation of, oh, well, why would I feel that way?
Right. And sometimes it is so telling, just asking
Right.
yourself that question. Because as soon as you ask yourself that question, you're taking all that energy away from projecting it and you're turning it inside. I even had that happen this weekend in a moment where I had like I'm still processing all the stuff that we did while we were away. And it was like I
Right.
had a little weirdly explosive meltdown over a pretty minor thing, like what you would look at as a pretty minor thing. And I stopped myself with my husband from saying, you blah, 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 blah. Right. I stopped myself. It started coming out of my mouth and I stopped and I said, I feel this way right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, it's incredible how much that it's like the whole picture changes.
Mm-hmm.
Whole picture shifts, and it's almost like, oh, well, let's look at that instead of,
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for that.
Right. Because when I did, yes. And when I did that, it was a stop from, it was like it was only a moment. And when I did that, it was, why do I feel like this? Like, why did this cause such an explosion? It's really not a big deal. Like, like all of a
Right.
sudden you're like, ooh, so what's underneath the surface that I have that's been simmering that caused it to go blah, right? Which
Right.
actually was hugely revelationary to me. Like I
And
was like,
didn't require such a long, drawn out, arduous process to get the equal results.
yes, yes, yes. So, it actually brought up something for both of us, which was great. And it brought up something that I was like, wow, I didn't know I held this in me still. I thought I had gotten rid of that a long time ago. Wow, that was so skillfully and artfully hidden within.
Right.
And had I not stopped in that moment and just said, you blah, 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 and you blah, 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 and put it on and try to put it on him, I wouldn't have seen it. And it was just that one moment of stopping and saying, whoa, I'm just going to change that to, I feel this way. Why do I feel this way? And then there's a silence, right? Because then it's like, oh crap. I just busted myself.
Because right then it's like, oh yeah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Well, and it was funny, even this morning, I had a situation where I was accusing someone of putting insecurities on me, and that triggered me. And so I was responding like, don't put that on me. And then I'm sitting there going, okay, wait a minute. So it still even works in that moment of, telling someone to take responsibility for themselves, all while you're not taking responsibility for yourself.
Right.
But that was one of those like, oh, okay, so we need to not only back the truck up, we need to back the whole traffic up.
Yes. Yes. Well, and then, it's funny is I have found it, I don't know about you, but like I have found in doing that recently, because I've been really good at catching myself when this happens, right? Lately. And it's been great. I'll tell you, the last 6 months have been so cathartic in so many ways. There's so many hidden things have come up, but it's been explosive and uncomfortable, but all in a way of retraining myself to a place of stop, back up, but I find the biggest challenge for me, and I think that's for most of us, is when we start taking that breath and we shift the mirror back to ourselves. It's almost like the ego is still trying to roll forward, and you're stopping traffic. Like you said, the whole traffic, it's like you're stopping all the traffic. So it takes a minute. It takes a hot minute for it to stop, because it's like, no, but, and it's like, but look at this, not but, and look at this, and look at this.
Right.
But no. And so I find that I'll just stop, and I'll stop in the conversation. I will just sit for a minute, because it's like, and then the ego goes, well, how do I pull myself out of this? How do I get out of this traffic? I don't understand. I've already started rolling, I'm in it. And it's like, yeah, except it's not really there.
Right.
And it's like, and then sort of like you feel this deflation start happening of, Okay. And it's sort of weird when you're in the middle of a place where it could be an argument, it could be a, a contention,
Charged moment.
a charged moment. Yeah, that's a good term for it. A charged moment. Then you stop. And then the other person's like waiting because you've already started, right? And then you just sort of look, and this is how I've turned to. It's like, I'll just sit there and I just look at him and he's like, and I just have nothing to say at that moment.
Right. Right.
Can I just track that? Let's start over. Can we start over? Because that was really a bad way to start.
Right. Or I found that I tend to just get quiet while I'm trying to figure it out. And then that's perceived as, oh, so you don't even want to talk to me now.
Oh, yeah, shutting down. Right.
Yeah.
Are you shutting
Right.
down? You're shutting down now. That's what I get.
Right. And it's like, well, actually, no.
No, I'm changing direction of the whole traffic jam. So give me a moment.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
But
the comfortable part. Yeah.
but that one thing of that one change in my pattern of why would I feel this way? Asking myself that question just has changed everything about the way I approach triggers, or actually really anything.
Yeah, me too.
And I think that learning that or retraining myself to do that automatically is so valuable. And so, it just changes everything. It
Well,
really does.
it makes the conversation more productive.
It does. It does.
And it seems, in my experience, it has cleared things up so much more quickly.
Yes.
So Vanessa says, oh my goodness, yes, I've been doing that the past few days, stopping myself and just going
Into observation.
I love this discussion. Hadn't thought about why I'm feeling this way in the moment. And I just got cut off on that.
Says I'm feeling
Yeah.
about asking why I'm feeling this way in the moment. That's very helpful. That's helpful. Yeah, it really does. It almost says to the ego, sit down for a minute.
Yep. Take a breather.
Right. Sit down for a minute and when you ask yourself, especially when you're in that heightened state of sensitivity, and you ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? The answer typically is right there, like,
Yeah.
I got this. I got
Yes.
this.
Yes. Yes.
And
And you
then-
know what? That's when you become thankful for having the situation, because it's what pushes it to the surface, right? So you're sparking it, right? But then you're stopping the spark in a way of saying, I'm just wanting to see what's underneath the spark, right? Because
Right.
this is the moment. This is the moment.
Right.
The beautiful moment where it's come to light that I can see it clearly and easily. And that's what happened for me this weekend, where I was just like, wow, do I really hold this in me? Have I still been holding this in me? Wow.
I know.
Wow.
And as much as I said, I don't, I
Yeah.
have been.
Right.
And I know that when you look at it and you stop it, like you said, at that spark moment, it gets to a place of where all the energy that went into that spark can now go somewhere else
Mm-hmm.
and be used for other joyful, pleasant, fulfilling moments, instead of holding the energy of this just waiting for the next spark.
Right.
And
Which has to be
feeding-
bigger if we suppress it more.
Right. And feeding it to the point where it then becomes like more of an explosion
Yes.
instead of just a spark.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so, yeah. And that's the biggest, I feel like if we utilize those moments. And so, a lot of the stuff we talk about are everyday things that we just overlook because they're habits, right? Especially so when we're committed to, our path in consciousness, it's seeing how everything we do is a part of that consciousness, right? So, and that includes our arguments, that includes our triggers, that includes when we want to bad talk somebody, or, be irritable with somebody, or put blame on somebody for anything that
Right.
we have emotion about.
Yes. And if you really if you really dig all the way to the bottom of this, it is all about us because there
Yes.
is no one but us.
Right.
There's no one but me.
And it's all a reflection back to me, right?
Exactly, exactly. And this is a great way to practice that without having to feel like you have to expand to that full level
Yeah.
to be able to get to the bottom of something by just saying, you know, why would I feel this way?
Yeah.
What in my past or what in my now or what in my fears is creating this for me? And or where am I doing that for myself?
Yeah.
Or where am I expecting someone else to fulfill me when I'm not doing that for myself?
Right. Right. Vanessa says, what are your thoughts on
On
narcissism and reflection? In what way? That's the question.
Well, I just in general, I feel that narcissism is just a reflection back to me of where I need to be, not need to be, because that's egoic, where I could flow more into being self-fulfilled.
Well, you know, I think the way people look at narcissism, or the term narcissism itself, has to do with an egoic. So there's a difference. And this goes back to, okay. So there's a difference between egoic self-centralism, right? Being egoically self-centered versus being self-central, right? Which is a different kind of energy, you know? So yeah, if dealing with a narcissist on the other side of a relationship, do you still just lean into the reflection of it? Yeah, because there's something about that for you.
Exactly.
Everything.
Or you wouldn't notice that they're a narcissist.
Right. Right.
And you know, the difference between allowing that narcissistic behavior to negatively influence you or just sitting or seeing it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a big difference in being in observation of it versus affected by it.
Yes. Yeah. So number one, we define narcissism differently because, we say being egoically self-centered is really what we talk about with narcissism is like, okay, everything is built around you. And that's to the detriment though of everybody else around you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So that's the egoic self.
Of everyone else.
Yes. At the expense of everyone else. When we are self-central, it's everything has to do with me. And that's completely inclusive of the crap and the great stuff.
And it's all self-contained.
Yes, very self-contained. And it's not in detriment to anybody else. It's totally, this is me. It's taking that mirror and turning around on yourself, right? So, when you have somebody, I mean, there are people that I know in my life that I think would probably be defined as narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't affect me. Like right. I have to actually think hard about it going, well, would they in this? Yeah. One particular person that I can think of. Yeah. And
I do believe that in relationships, you train people how to treat you by what you allow.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more self-central you become, the less available and the less you allow them to have their lack of self-centralism affect you.
And by the way, at the deep core of it, narcissism is due to really deep self-loathing and unworthiness.
Right.
Because it's this compulsion to have to prove yourself better than everybody else by putting them down, by making them feel less than or whatever. So it really just comes from like a deep sense of that, the deep sense of unworthiness. So it's funny. And because that's what I'm thinking of is, so the one individual that I'm thinking of that I would probably be defined that way, that's how I see them is, you know what? They just have that much of a deep sense of unworthiness about themselves. And that's what they feel like they need to do. Right. So I just accept them for what they are. Honestly, I've just come to a place. That's what I was thinking about, going, yeah, because it doesn't really affect me anymore. And it doesn't even really trigger me anymore. I just see it. And I'm just like, okay, so when, and the funny part is, as I've seen it and accepted it within them, and I accept it because I see the whole picture of what causes it, I just don't let it affect me. And as
Right.
I've not let it
And
affect,
that's once you've come to that place of being more self-central
yeah,
and having that worthiness and working through, you know, trusting your guidance, trust and allowing for yourself, and so many aspects. And it starts with that. Okay, why would I feel this way
mhm,
when they do this? Why would I feel that way?
right, right,
And
right,
working through that step by step by step by step.
right, to a place of, and usually it's, and when it's somebody in our closest, circles, our immediate family, and all that kind of stuff, it hits us. So here's the thing. Yeah. So she put, definitely, I can see that makes sense. Interesting. Yep. Me and that damn worthiness. Yeah. Yes. So at the end of, that's what I was going to say. At the end of the day, then it's like, okay, so then if I'm triggered by that, then where do I have unworthiness? If that's, like being pushed to the surface,
Exactly.
that
Right.
makes me, like, well, like, how dare they? And da, 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 because then you get defensive. And whenever you get defensive, it's because you feel like there's something to defend versus, you can believe what you want. You can judge how you want. That's not how I am.
Right.
And
Yes.
coming to acceptance for yourself. Yeah. So, and that's so tricky because we're not used to doing that. We're used to that play, that dance, right? That interaction.
Right.
And
Well, and a lot of times relationships are based solely on that dance. And
Mhm.
so once you stop participating, something in the relationship has to change.
Yes. Yes. And I have realized that this individual over the years, as I've accepted that for them, they um they have stopped acting the same way toward me, and they might exhibit those behaviors in front of me, but they are not necessarily geared to me anymore
Right. Right.
because because it
You're not
just,
available.
I'm not available for it. It just flows through me, right? So that's why it takes me a minute to think about it. And well, I guess you would define, yeah, I guess you would define them as, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's funny. And so what the problem that we have, the challenge that we have is the ego loves to define. And when it defines, sometimes defining something allows us to project onto it because
Right.
it justifies the definition, right? Oh, well, look, they're just being this, they're being narcissistic. That's how they are,
Right.
right?
Right.
Instead of, well, why am I triggered by that? Like what, like why is it still bothering me? And do I still feed into it? Does it still feed me? Really is what you're going to ask yourself. And you don't want to take responsibility for that, but that's the question. Does that still feed me? Well, obviously it must be if I'm still triggered by it.
Right.
I'm still being affected by it negatively or in a limiting fashion.
Right. Yes.
And that's a very different way for us to interact with people.
It really is. And a lot of it takes away the power of saying that this person is defined by that versus it's a behavior that they have. Just like we talk about I'm diabetic. So that defines me versus physiologically I have these reactions to this, but I can, which means that it's actually changeable.
Right.
Versus being defined by it. It's like, oh, well, they can't help it.
Right. Right. Which is, I think, one of the biggest limitations that we still have collectively is we define ourselves and we don't realize by saying I am this, right? I am depressed. I am unlucky. I am whatever. Yeah. Diabetic. I am overweight. I am unhappy.
I am depressed.
Right. Yeah. And when we say things like that, we continually redefine ourselves that way versus saying, I am having situations where I feel this way.
Right. Right.
See, and feel how that softens, right? Instead of saying I am depressed because I have situations where I feel this way, then that opens the doorway to say, so what is that feeding in me, right? By
Right.
creating those situations repeatedly. Because if it's a pattern where I'm trying to be defined as depressed, well, then instead of saying it's because when I say I'm depressed, we're sort of victimizing ourselves to that. Like, I'm depressed.
Right. Like I have no choice.
Right.
Well, and I meant to find this before we got on, and I just now found it. As usual, something that Kim Turner recently posted. Real growth is when you start checking and correcting yourself. Instead of blaming others, you take your power back by being responsible for your life. Which I think that's what we're saying by starting with that place of, okay, why would I feel this way?
Yes. Laurel says, I'm experiencing XYZ. Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Right.
Well, and the other one that I commented on, Kim's thing last night was, what
Right.
triggers you is what you need to heal kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. Those
like,
go
hey,
hand in
we're
hand.
talking about that tomorrow on Ascended World.
Right.
But yeah, so, all of that. And so like, yeah, we've sort of gone off on a little tangent, but it's all related and it's starting to change the conversation we're having with ourselves in our head, right? And
Right.
with others, but it's starting with what's in our head,
Right. Right. And it further just unearths the unconscious flow that we have energetically by saying, okay, since I'm not aware of this, by asking myself, why would I feel this way? It allows all that's unconsciously working against us, or, there is no against us, but working with us to say, okay, now that I see this and I'm conscious of this, is this what I would choose?
Right.
And that really is a whole different way of living in my mind.
Yeah. Right. Because then when we start looking at it, like I said, I just find it such a gift when we can start catching ourselves in those moments. Right.
Yes.
And I get so many questions. We get so many questions from people saying, well, how do I change this?
Right.
Or this person, like,
Where do I start?
Yes. Or over the course of the retreat last week, there was a lot of questions about, well, this person in my life is doing this, what is that showing me? And then my question is, well, how does it affect you?
Right.
What do you feel about that? Oh, well, nothing. Like, and so if the answer is, well, nothing really, but obviously it's reflecting something back to me. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just showing you that you really have nothing to do with that.
Right.
And I said, and if you're not emotionally charged, but if it is affecting you and you're pretending it's not affecting you, that's the thing to ask yourself.
Right. 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 And I think the more you practice this and ask yourself this, the easier the answers come.
Yeah.
And the easier it is to be able to just stop and go, oh, okay, I see that already. I see that already.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, and that's why the trigger is really such a gift, because
right. Because the gratitude just follows right on the heels of, I see that now. Wow.
Yeah, I would have never seen that otherwise if it hadn't come up that way.
Right. And it typically, I know for myself, this, what happened with me and this whole set of circumstances, the realization that I was holding a level of insecurity that I was totally blind to.
Oh yeah, me too. That was me too with my set of situation, of course,
and
right?
To come to that place of acknowledgement of that insecurity, and then the ability to nurture myself to a better place in that set of circumstances. Why would I not be grateful for that?
Yeah. Well, because now you've cleared something else off the slate that, holds you back in some really subliminal way.
Well, and what if that had, grown and festered into something into the physical?
Right.
So I'm so grateful and so thankful that I now am conscious of this and can take steps towards the self-love and nourishment right there.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, that's what I'm talking about.
And, shameless self-promotion, this is where we start our self-love program in November will be launched on Friday, this
Yes.
Friday the 5th, which is what all of this that we've been talking about over the past 7 months now, right? 6 months. It just ties it all together, all of it.
It really does. It's one feeds the next, and comes to this beautiful culmination. And
Yes.
it's really incredible to
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
to step through this. Yeah.
And it makes it, it's like, because I was thinking about that this morning before we got on, and I was like, it's interesting to think about what we've gone through over doing, just creating these sort of courses, right? You and I in our private lives separately and together and everything else, it's just been so I just can't even, like,
There aren't words.
transformative is an understatement, right? So
Right.
in a way that I think I've never gone through before. And the ego goes, I'm tired. Can we just stop now?
Are we there yet?
We there
Can we
yet?
be done?
And we're like, oh well, even though this is the 7th course for this, and the final course for this series, we have a whole set of other stuff waiting for next
Right.
year that's coming.
Right.
Stay tuned. But it was like, but in looking at it, it has changed being so conscious and aware and having to stay on top of it as the instructors, right, of these kind of
Mhm.
courses, as well as then participating. It has just been staying on top of it. My commitment is always to walk my talk. So if I'm teaching it, I'm living it, right? It's my
Right.
responsibility. That's what I take on. So in looking at how it has forced me into a completely different way of thinking, of interacting, and to such minute details that I didn't even realize hadn't been incorporated before, right?
Mhm.
That make things, and it's like, we've talked about how we always talk about, like, oh, well, we're not human beings have a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right.
And when we truly remember that every single thing we do, say, and think is tied back to our consciousness, is tied back to, spirit, to being being spirit, and having this experience in the embodiments that we've created, that we pretend to be separate in, and starting to see how everything just is so connected in such a beautiful symphonic fashion, right? And it starts to bring about this completely different level of appreciation.
Right.
But it, because then it's like, before it was like, okay, blah blah blah, 90% of this is spiritual, and then, oh, there's the day-to-day stuff, the mundane stuff, and the stuff I get irritated about or whatever. Like, that's what we think, that's what we do all the time. I'm 40%, 50%, 60%, you give the number, right?
Right.
At some point you realize all of it is my consciousness, all of it.
Right.
Even brushing my teeth is my consciousness and
Right.
my choice, and my pattern, and every interaction we have is in some way an expression of ourselves embodied and interacting as that symphony, even if we're trying to hide it from ourselves as part of this play in separation, right?
Mhm.
So that's when we're taking the triggers and embracing them is a completely different way than what we're doing, before. And that's the thing. That's what I always encourage people is, like, get one more step past the trigger. Like, yes, you see
Right.
the trigger, but go past the trigger and go, so what's that? What is that pushing to the surface for me to look at that I haven't looked at before?
Right. Right. I mean, you could think of it as like the trigger is finally recognizing the thorn in your hand, and by just seeing it, you're pushing it further in versus, okay, let's get it out.
Yeah.
let's get it out. Let's look at it. Let's finish this versus postpone.
Yeah, let's complete this.
Right.
Tie up all our loose ends, because that's supposedly what we're doing, right? Like creating the loose ends, and now we're tying them up.
Well, and being available to, all the energies that are the new energies, or the unremembered energies that are returning.
Yes.
I mean, we can't embrace change staying the same.
Yeah, that just, it doesn't exist on the same playing field, I guess, right? It doesn't, because it is and it isn't. But it's recognizing our self-denial.
Yes. Yes.
And for us to fully embrace our divinity, right? Our wholeness, is for us to have to see all of it, all of what we've created, even in the illusion of separation that we still hide from ourselves. Because the more we still hide from ourselves, so if you think about it, if we're still hiding something from ourselves, then we're not, it's like if you're still hiding stuff in the closet's still not clean.
Right. The job is not done.
Right. So it's some way, in some way, shape, or form, is for it to come to the surface and be resolved, embraced, to have gratitude for. Like, that's what we did all through the retreat, was we expanded ourselves into wholeness, and in that
Right.
wholeness saw any friction and denial that came up, and embraced it with gratitude for what it was there to show us. Like, what is it there for? What is it there to show me? And thank you for being there, because otherwise I would have kept you in the closet, and then it would have prevented me from really coming to a much wider, expanded piece of consciousness for myself.
Right.
So that's how it all sort of steps on each other and becomes, and I've found that ever since I've returned, it's like even more, exacerbated, because
Right.
it's like, okay, I'm holding myself at that vibration. So let's just bloop, 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 bloop. It just comes right on up.
Right.
But the good part is that it comes right on up. I can change the direction of it in a moment now.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And then have gratitude for it, let it go, let it be assimilated back to the whole, and then move on. And it's so flowing and easy, so much easier and productive. It feels like when I got back there, I got back late Thursday night. So like so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for me were like a year in terms of processing stuff. It was just crazy.
Right.
Like, I'm thinking, well, when did I come back? It feels like it was like a week ago already, but it was only a couple of days. So, all right. So what's our clearing for today? Our clearing statement, creation statement for today. Our intention is,
Well, I always like to start with the belief that I have the ability to do this. I can see myself coming to the place of ease with switching it around and seeing it from that higher perspective.
Yeah. And I also am worthy. I like always adding that I'm worthy to allow myself, like I'm worthy to remember how to, and allow myself to see that.
Yes. Right.
That I can see that in every moment, that I'm worthy to, that I'm going to allow myself to do it. And I remember how to do it, because that's a lot of times we're like, well, I don't know how to do this and whatever. It's like, yeah, you do. You just haven't remembered yet. So right. I'm worthy to, I remember how to, and I allow myself to remember how to see that in every moment and everything and every trigger, and how to utilize that and how to change that. And I allow myself to do it, to change that direction, no matter what the situation brings. And it's easy and it's fun and it's clear and productive and expansive and whatever other kind of vernacular you want to put to it. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. So everybody close your eyes, take a deep breath, get yourself comfortable. As you step out of separation, back into wholeness and oneness, we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. That was interesting. Unexpected. A couple things came out and it was like little gluts bubbled to the top. And it was like, oh, look at that. And then I didn't even have to look at that. Like what was inside of it, just sort of let it dissipate. And then like I saw like
Right.
little shadows of what that was. And it just sort of went shh, and then shh. And I was like, okay. And then and I was like, oh, if we can make that easy for ourselves individually, look at how much we could do with that collectively, right?
Right. Right.
And so I was
Yeah.
sitting in that, and that felt really nice.
Yeah. It felt very flowing, very lava lamp ish.
Mm. Bloop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's a great thing to sit in this week.
Yes.
Feels
Yes.
really
And
good.
I think you will create circumstances to where this is very appropriate to continually reinforce what we've done.
Yeah. In an easy and flowing way.
Always, always.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next week. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a great week.